this computer recording. Hello! It's so great to see you. This is the Monarch Crusader, Carol Pasternak, reporting to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm very excited to have today a different kind of guest to talk about butterflies. We're going to talk about the spiritual aspect of butterflies and attempt to answer the question, do we receive messages from our loved ones that are departed? Do we receive messages from butterflies from our dearly departed? We're going to be discussing that today. I am going to introduce our guest speaker, Phyllis. Phyllis Calvey is a writer, educator, and storyteller. Her latest book, The Butterfly Club Is That You, shares the true life stories of how the perfect timing of a butterfly's appearance has been used to comfort someone after a loved one has died, communicating a message of comfort and hope to people in their greatest time of need. It kindled a love affair with butterflies that was the inspiration for writing her first children's book that she's also going to tell us about today, and it's called Caterpillar's Search for the Perfect Halloween Costume. Known as the Butterfly Lady, Phyllis provides a way for parents and children to learn more about these amazing creatures and how we can help to ensure their survival. She and her husband, Brian, currently live in Bellingham, Massachusetts, surrounded by her dear family. And Phyllis used to be a teacher. She's, of course, always a teacher and a pastor, and has actually written a lot of books, and including House of the Lord, Keepers of the Light, and many other questions that answer questions about Christianity in plain language. So, Phyllis, tell us about your book and your experiences.
I love the Butterfly Club, and since I am a storyteller, rather than tell you what it's about, I would like to share 3 different stories about different people. And in the story, you will actually more feel what the Butterfly Club is.
Yes, and then later on, people here are going to be able to share their own spiritual experiences with butterflies before we do our regular announcements. So go ahead.
Oh, I really hope you do. So the first story is about a little boy. It was Mother's Day weekend, and a Little League game had been scheduled for that Saturday. An 8-year-old boy was up at bat, and when he started to swing the bat, getting ready for his first pitch, suddenly a whole flutter of butterflies surrounded him. The people who were watching had tears streaming down their face because they knew the little boy had just lost his mother to cancer. And yet he had this big grin on his face. Afterwards, he explained that the butterflies he knew came to tell him that his mother was in heaven and she was watching him play. These are the kind of stories you have to think, why would a little boy, 8 years old, know to connect butterflies with the presence of his mother? Something innate about butterflies, something that goes beyond their beauty and perhaps even what many butterfly enthusiasts realize right now. The second story is about a mother. Danny was 18 years old, and he had just left for college 3 weeks earlier when his mother got the call that he was hit, struck, and killed by a hit-and-run driver. She went through the stages of grief, so much of it revolving around trying to figure out what had happened in the final moments of her son's death. Until one day she realized she couldn't go on any longer. That day, she started walking in a nearby meadow until she was abruptly stopped by a log that had fallen to block her path. She noticed that the log had a smooth bark on it that just beckoned her to sit. And so she sat, intending to shut out the world and immerse herself into this grief. There was a branch in the center of the log that reached up like an arm to the sky. And now a butterfly broke her meditation by landing on that branch. It was a monarch. And it seemed to flutter around her just a little too closely. And it stayed right by her side until she was completely drawn to it. And then it landed at her feet. She bent down, unconsciously holding her breath, because before it happened, she knew that the butterfly was not going to fly away. As she held it in her hands, she could hear her son whisper to her, "It's okay, Mom. I'm all right." And after that moment, it was like her grief disappeared like the morning dew when the sun draws it to it. That was a story that came to me before I wrote The Butterfly Club. And I knew the mother, I knew Nancy, and I knew Danny, who was 18. And I actually was the one who got the call at our church, at our parish, that this had happened. Nancy left everything, her community, her friends, her family, and just was in such a deep state of despair. And I saw the transformation of what happened to her after this encounter with the monarch butterfly. It was something that she said you can't really convey to someone if they haven't felt it, but she had no need to, because for her, the perfect timing, as Carol was saying, the perfect timing of the appearance of a butterfly is part of what the Butterfly Club is about. That there's always that time of need when a person needs comfort in such a dark despair. And here's the monarch or another butterfly appearing to impart that comfort in a way that you will see is transforming to people's lives. The third story I'd like to share is a story that I have loved since I started writing the Butterfly Club. Since people have found the book, I often get letters from them of their own butterfly encounters. And on my website, I've been gathering and posting a lot of these stories, hoping to one day be able to share all these encounters. And this was a letter I received from a professor who lives in Rhode Island, kind of close to where we live. And I would like to read the actual letter that he sent to me. I need a sip of water. Dan has been gone for about 7 years now and is sorely missed. Dan served in World War II as a bombardier, flying many missions in Italy. Having served with great loyalty, it was a source of much pain when he was discharged without honor. Dan was gay, and he carried the country's harsh judgment because of his sexual orientation. For many long years, he set upon a path to reverse his discharge status. 10 years before his death, by dint of his persistence, efforts, and the evolving cultural norms, he was finally honorably discharged. My wife, Florette, and I, who were Dan's closest friends for over 4 decades, were part of all those years of grief and so overjoyed at the final outcome. And at the end, we were there with him outside the church after his funeral mass, arrayed around Dan's flag-draped casket. Oh, it was a beautiful day, and the military honors began. The rifle salute. Then the first soulful notes of the taps played, and a butterfly began fluttering over Dan's casket, hovering there before it wafted off into the blue. The synchronicity of that brief, silent moment was not lost upon us. We were brought to tears at the rightness of it all. When we read the title of your book, The Butterfly Club, together with its subtitle, Is That You?, the imagery of the cover spontaneously brought our dear Dan to mind. I love how he ended his letter. Well, as Bob Hope used to sing, thanks for the memories. And I thought I'd like to take time to share my own with you. It's stories like that. I posted that immediately on my website because it's not just the moment of pain or grief that a person's going through, like Nancy, but this beautiful professor, Professor Austin, who went through the pain with his friend. And I can't even imagine the pain that man went through after his service to our country. And then at the funeral, when you hear the taps play, that is enough just to that soulful cry of the taps and the death. I just could picture that butterfly coming at that moment to whisper that Dan was okay. Like the professor said, everything was right, and brought the comfort that Florette and Austin also needed. So that's really what my book is about. It's about stumbling upon kind of a mystery of how does a butterfly know to appear at the perfect timing of a person's greatest need? And as the years passed, the book came out in 2014, I cannot believe how many people have a butterfly story to share. And I'm hoping some of you do, that you've shared a butterfly or have experienced a butterfly encounter yourself. I can't hear you, Carol.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've got to
I
unmute myself if I want to talk. So while you're thinking about your own butterfly stories, Phyllis, can you tell us about your brand new book as well?
Oh, sure. Well, the Butterfly Club really set a love affair with monarchs. I just fell in love with them. And I didn't know a lot of facts, but doing research, and if I can just do an aside before I get to the book, just their connection with death and how the grieving and experience of death is something that grieving groups all across the world have butterflies for their logo. So that the monarch, the more I learned about it, the deeper I fell in love with it. And it led to my wanting to write what I think is a very endearing book. It's called Caterpillar's Search for the Perfect Halloween Costume. And it's about, can you see it good? It's hard for me to tell if you can see it. Okay. So the book is about Caterpillar's friends, very interesting friends who have special costumes that really fit them. And I think the costumes themselves will be very interesting to children, why they pick them. And they're friends who care about each other. And I love that because it's a story that I think goes further than Halloween. So it's a story of friends caring about each other and helping Caterpillar to find the perfect Halloween costume. You probably can guess what it is, but it's fun that a lot of the kids that have read the book so far, one little girl said, I think the caterpillar became a princess. And then as she was reading the end of the book, the mother said, she said to her mother, oh, she's a butterfly. So I'm hoping the book really helps parents have a chance to share the beautiful transformation of a butterfly actually, of a caterpillar actually turning into a butterfly. And I also have listed a way families can help save the monarchs and how they can be involved with planting milkweed. So it was a book kind of twofold, to introduce families to helping monarchs and to that I just fell in love with the other characters in the book too. I love Ant and some of the characters. So you might find that a good story.
So Phyllis, has that book been launched?
Just recently, it just came out mid-September.
Mid-September.
Mid-September. That would be a trick. Mid-April.
Oh, mid-April. Okay, that's more recently. Mid-April. And
published.
Where would we look for a copy?
If you can go on my website and order one directly from me, and I can sign the book to whoever you'd like. Or if it's easier for you, you can go to Amazon. It's listed on Amazon as well.
Okay, I am going to call upon somebody else for a minute. And while I'm doing that, Phyllis, can you type your website into the chat? And after she types it into the chat, everybody needs to click on it. Okay, all you need to do is click on it. Doesn't mean you have to buy the book. It means that now, after the meeting, you'll have a window open to look at Phyllis's website and see how interesting it is. And so then you'll have it. But while she's doing that, I am going to call upon Patty to share stories from her own website. Now, Patty and her husband, Fred, you can unmute yourself too if you'd like, Fred, have a website called Garden with Wings. And one of you, let's say Fred, could type the website into the chat as well. This is my go-to website for how do you find out what butterflies in your area and what do you need to feed them. And it's one of the best butterfly and host plant websites that I've seen, no matter where you are in the States and even Canada. On that website, so everybody, it's there. Click on Gardens with Wings because you'll want to go to it. There's a place to put your own spiritual story, and Patty is going to share one or more of those right now. Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, I don't really have a specific butterfly story to share. I just wanted to share that when we did start the website, we started the website with the intention of helping people attract butterflies to their gardens, you know, the plants and what plants they need to lay their eggs and the nectar plants. And we just had a small section in there that was like share your butterfly stories. We had no idea that this area would grow to what it is today. It is like the second popular page on the whole entire website. And we receive stories all over the world. They're Hartford stories. When I read them, I just cry. And lately, we added more information about the meaning of butterflies from the color aspect of it. And just within like 2 days after adding a new story about, you know, what the color of blue butterflies mean, those jump up to like the top 10 pages. So it's a very popular area. And we just keep looking to grow it. And, you know, that's about it. But I really admire what you're doing, Phyllis.
Oh,
and I would like to learn more.
I wish I don't see where your site is. To write it down so I can go to it.
Let me see. Let me just type it in real quick. Because, we have a lot of inquiries like, tell me more about butterflies, and I never know where to direct people. And now I know. Oh, I forgot an S. There's supposed to be an S after gardens.
All right, I still don't see that. Am I?
Oh, you know what? Because I posted it back to Carol. Hold on. Sorry. And
Okay.
Let's see. I messed something up now. What did I do? I clicked something.
Something with the butterflies coming up, habitat.
I changed my, yeah.
There it is. Oh, I see. Oh,
Okay.
It was there 1 second ago. Garden wings. No, it's not. The another one. Okay. Oh, there we are.
So it is underneath butterfly symbolism.
Gardens with wings.
So we add the stories as they come in. And then we started adding, what the meaning of the different colors are.
Yeah, so I'm sharing my screen right now.
Yeah.
And with any luck, you're looking at Gardens with Wings right now. So, Holly, put your hand up if you see the website Garden with Wings right now on the screen, the speaker view. Okay, good. You see that. So you can see that I can scroll and get a visit from my mother-in-law. My husband and I were walking to the crematorium on the anniversary of my mother's life. So people not only are having all of these spiritual experiences, but they're very anxious to share them. So I am going to ask everyone now, have you had a spiritual experience with butterflies? Do you know anyone who has? If so, unmute yourself and tell us about it. Okay, then. We're with Karen. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Steve and I, my husband, were visiting, or we were actually on a trip, and we were going by Shanksville, Pennsylvania, in August of 2013. And they had just finished at that time the Flight 93 Memorial Wall. They hadn't done anything else on the property, but they had the wall there. So if any of you have been there, it's a very emotional place to visit anyway. And as we were walking to, as we drove onto the property and actually that whole day, and as we were driving onto the property, and as we were walking toward the wall, we didn't see any butterflies that whole day. But when we got to the wall and we were standing there, again, feeling extremely emotional in that place, a monarch butterfly flew in and landed on someone's name on the wall.
Oh.
And just stayed there for quite a while. And so that was extremely meaningful to us. So I wanted to share that. And I don't think Kylie is here, but if you all will recall when Kylie was talking that Kylie had an experience where her mother found a monarch at that site as well. And then the last story I'll share is just when my dad passed in March of 2015. I was standing at the back door looking out and really feeling his loss. And again, it was March, early March, and out of nowhere, a hackberry emperor butterfly flew up to the door and just looked in at me for quite some while, some time, really out of season. And I felt like, I had a visit, and the connection that Dad and I had with butterflies, in their later years, they lived in a senior community and in Richmond, Virginia, and we're over in Virginia Beach, and I would take chrysalises over of all the different species. We raise about 30 different species, but I would take, whatever chrysalises I might have, leave them with Dad, and he would have them out on his patio. He would monitor them. And when the butterflies came out, if I wasn't there visiting, if I was back home, he would gather up any of the residents that were interested, and they were very interested because many of them remembered seeing more butterflies when they were young than we do now. He would gather them up. They would get the butterfly out. They'd get to put it on their hand and hold it for, and there was a blind man there that had the experience of the butterfly actually, walking on his arm. And he said that just meant so much to him. So Dad became known as the Butterfly Man at the senior center, and learned a lot. He was a good student and learned a lot. In fact, at one point he said, well, maybe I should raise the caterpillars. And I said, now, Dad, that's a lot of work. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, you got to gather all the different food. You got to clean up their poop. And when I said poop, his eyes got that big. And he said, poop? And I said, well, what do you think? Everything poops. So he decided he wasn't going to do that, but he did enjoy the butterfly. So I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. And Bev has her hand up to share a story, so go ahead.
Yeah, mine's a little different. In September, a friend of mine was in an automobile accident and she broke her hip. So I took her black swallowtail caterpillars over to my house so that they could finish doing what they needed to do and overwinter. Well, one of the little buggers escaped, and I looked all over my car to try to find it because it was going to be close to pupating and all. Couldn't find it. Anyway, my father passed this year on February 2nd. So I've been running my mom around different places. So one time she's in the car and she's doing something under the seat. And I look down and I see the chrysalis of this swallowtail is now on the mat that I literally had just like cleaned out like a couple of days before. So it hadn't been there. So I picked it up. I said, Mom, here, let me get this. And the abdomen's still flexing. So it's still viable. But it's kind of curious because it's one of those ones with the spiritual meaning where I'm like going, okay, is this Dad telling me that no, Mom hasn't healed yet. She hasn't transformed yet into who she's going to be after his death and becoming to her new role. So I'm kind of curious to see what all that's going to turn into, but it was quite fascinating when I found that, because I'd been looking for it, and the fact that she was there and managed to have it appear when she was there was kind of interesting.
Am I, Carol, I can't hear you.
Let me put the, thank
There
you,
you go.
Phyllis.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to repeat that. This is everyone's last chance to ask questions. Actually, we haven't had a first question. Somebody's got to have some questions for Phyllis about her presentations across the country, who she speaks to, how these spiritual experiences have changed her life. And then we will do announcements. So how often do you speak, Phyllis?
Sometimes a lot. It depends with, sadly, with the pandemic, I belong to a Rhode Island Author Association that arranges where we can go to farmers markets and all different wonderful speaking engagement places where you can meet a lot of different people. They have a big symposium that is arranged. And this year, every single event was canceled with the pandemic. So that's making it very difficult to go out. But still, what amazes me with butterflies is that when people really need you, they seem to find you. And I really have that feeling that butterflies find you in the perfect timing when they need to. So I still have people that will write to me all of a sudden. Oh, one woman, a young girl, she was maybe 21, and she was really having a difficult time. And she just typed in, do butterflies whisper messages from heaven? And she said, my book popped up. And she had stories, and she's had quite a few stories. They're on my website. And she writes to me all the time, even about other things in her life, because it just makes this this beautiful connection. So I still, a woman from New Zealand, this was amazing. She just wrote to me again yesterday. Her husband actually raised butterflies and he died several years ago. And she's just been so heartbroken since then. And she found out about the book. And I said, how did you find out about the book? Her name's Dawn. And she said, I wasn't even looking for it. And Phyllis, I can't tell you, but something was scrolling up on my screen and it was your book. She said, I didn't Google it. I didn't find anything. And so here she is in New Zealand connecting with me. And now she writes to me about her granddaughter who was just born. And she's going through a really difficult time. She wrote to me 2 days ago and said, she's just missing her husband so much. And butterflies do come to her house all the time, and she knows it's her husband, Dave, but it is so difficult because she's alone and her family lives away from her. So I just think when butterflies need you, and it's given me time to, well, one, to write the caterpillar story, and I'm writing another article that I feel like maybe that's my time now to gather some of this really interesting information that the Butterfly Club has led me to find and share that. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping to get out soon.
I imagine that there are many of us who struggle with the idea of getting a message from a butterfly from the other side. Some of us even wonder about the existence of the other side. Audrey and I are watching a Netflix program, which is quite fascinating. Audrey, are you still there? What's the name of that Netflix program we're watching? It's about the afterlife. Audrey's going to
Yes.
unmute herself at some point and tell us what the name of that is.
I'm unmuted. Can you
Oh,
hear
good.
me?
What's the name of that show we're watching?
It's called Surviving Death.
Surviving Death. And the first episode has about 20 people telling about their near-death experiences, which means that they went to the other side and came back. And of course, everybody thinks they're nuts, just the way everybody thinks that people have spiritual experiences with butterflies are nuts. But then when you hear that more people have them and you're a member of the Butterfly Club, that validates your personal experience. And now if you want to watch this program, all these people who thought they were alone with their near-death experiences, when they meet up with other people and find that they had very, very similar experiences about life on the other side, they feel better and we get to be educated. So if that's one of the things you wonder about, whether butterflies give you messages from the other side or whether there is in fact another side, I would recommend that you watch Surviving Death, which has chapters on with mediums, talking to the other side, and it's really fun. We are going to move on to announcements. I'm going to call upon Sid. Sid, would you like to make an announcement? Or would anybody else want to make an announcement about what you're doing in your area right now? An event you're having, a Zoom you're doing, something fabulous about butterflies that's coming up that we all should know about? Just unmute yourself and jump in. You start, Sid. Okay. Well, I will speak for Sid. Sid came on to our last Zoom directly from Mexico. He was on a bus in February taking tourists to the sanctuaries, and it was really, really fun. And we even got to see those other people having the time of their lives. Sid is a tour guide, and he does Mexico. He's got another trip going next year. And let's see if he's still with us at all.
Yes, I am here, Carol. I am here.
Oh, there's Sid. Sid, tell us about your trip for next year. Because if you haven't been to the sanctuaries, you know, go ahead, Sid.
Let me see. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I just want to share a quick story that happened to me back in 2007. I was spending some time in the United States. So it happened that I was in New York, and it was October, late September, beginning of October. and I was on the top of the Rockefeller Center. I was in a down moment in life, and I wanted to come back to Mexico. And by standing on this Rockefeller Center on the top, looking over New York, suddenly I felt something on my face. And I looked down, and it was a monarch butterfly. So if you look closely from the top of the Rockefeller, you could see like hundreds of butterflies passing by Manhattan. So I felt that was like a slap in my face, like, come back with us. They were on their way to Mexico. And here I am in Mexico, 13 years later, and I'm taking people to see the beautiful butterflies every year in February. So that's the connection I see, like by being on top of the Rockefeller Center and being slapped by a butterfly, and then looking over, and they were flying over Manhattan, going south in September. That's something for me, no?
Well,
And on top of everything, well, you know, like,
you're sending out energy like a monarch butterfly, which is really good, which would attract them. I would love it if you could put your website into the chat and people can click on it so that they can look at his trip for next year. It's one of the best trips around at the lowest prices. And I have spoken to people who've been on that trip and they don't have enough superlatives. On that note, we will move to Leo, who has a story to share with us. Go ahead, Leo. Unmute yourself, Leo.
Thanks, Carol. Well, mine, it's not spiritual, but I'm just curious to see if anybody else kind of experiences these things with a monarch. I have many, but I only mentioned these three most popular ones. I was planting milkweed plants in an empty lot, like it was a private owned land that I got the okay from the owner. So I went in there with about 10 to 12 little plants. Me and a friend of mine, we dug the holes and this and that. And by the time I started watering these 6-7 inches tall milkweed plants, a butterfly came, of course, and started laying eggs. That was one of them. Another time, I had a gentleman, an older gentleman, a little older than me, who wanted me to bring him some field, well-established milkweed plants. And of course, I have a friend of mine, we go in a field where there's hundreds. We dug a few, we went to his property. I parked in his driveway, and all of a sudden a monarch flew by, and I went right inside his garage, came back out, and this guy, he was shocked. Never seen a monarch in his property. Of course, he lived in that house. This was his third year. Never seen a monarch flying by. All of a sudden, I show up in the driveway. This monarch goes right inside his garage. I mean, that's when the people started calling me the milkweed man. Actually, he was the first one that came up with a name. And then just down the street here in our community garden, again, I go there at the plant, the usual plants when the end of May came. We had some flowers, we had some milkweed. And before I even finished putting the last milkweed plant down, 2 butterflies came and they started laying eggs. So, but I have many of those stories. I'm just curious, does anybody else have these similar stories?
Leo, I am not surprised that you're having all of these stories because you've got butterflies on your mind all the time. Leo has practically single-handedly changed the landscape of, where is it, Windsor that you live? He sends out thousands and thousands of seeds. And do you send out any plants as well? Do you give them away or just seeds?
The plants, actually, I give them away here locally. I don't ship them because, we're not in the milkweed business, as I tell people. But we do harvest. I think this year we were close to 1 million seeds. considering what I read online, that an ounce has about, I think, 4,000 seeds. So anyway, by the weight of the milkweed seeds in my 2 fridge, I figured we had over 1 million. Now, we're down to half
Leo,
a-
how many people did it take to separate the seeds from the fluff for 1 million seeds?
It's about 8 to 10 people, volunteers that I have from my group. I post them in the group, and then they offer themselves to do that. So I deliver them 1 5-gallon pail of milkweed pods, and they call me back in a few days to go pick up the seeds already cleaned.
So there you are. One guy leads a group of 8 or 10, and we wind up with 1 million milkweed seeds. Wow, what a difference in his area. So I am going to wrap down the meeting. Are there any other? Oh, there's 2 new links for you to click. One of them is to my website, because in a week, I'll be having my last Zoom of the season. And once again, it's going to be completely different. We're going to meet the Monarch Watch Conservation Specialist. So Monarch Watch has a team of probably 20 conservation specialists that work around the US and Canada to promote monarch conservation. We're going to hear from 3 or 4 of them about the good work that they do. So that'll be completely different, and you can get information about it on my website or on my personal page. I hope you'll all be friends with me. And or on my business page, the Monarch Crusader on Facebook. You can look there for announcements about the next meeting. And I hope that you'll share that with your groups and come to. And any other announcements before we close? I want to thank our wonderful speaker for giving us something, Phyllis, something completely different and to think about and to put our minds to and validate our experiences. That was wonderful. And you're all free, of course, at any time to leave the meeting, but in particular now. And those of us who want to stay for another few minutes and chat about just anything at all, we can. But for now, Bev and Irene, I am going to say goodbye.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I am
Thank
going
you.
to stop the recording so that we can speak freely. Pause.